welcome to worship. No, I'm not a visiting preacher, as someone's asked me already. And it's lovely to be back and to open the scriptures with you. Our God is a God who does the impossible. And when we read stories like this in the Gospels, it's just quite amazing at the instantaneous change in someone's life. Now, we've all got our own stories of our own testimonies and life and things that we've done. And sometimes it's quite remarkable. It's brought us to a point where we cannot not believe anymore. And I was thinking there as Sam was talking about the movement in the picture today. I was quite taken by that, actually. And Jesus, and the man reaching out to one thing, which was offering him hope, but reaching to the one who gave him hope. I did like that. And I thought there's a lot more to be heard on that, actually. But I was thinking about a man called Jimmy Freeman. Jimmy Freeman was in his 60s. I've told you a bit about him before, when he trusted Jesus as his saviour. As a youngster, he'd mucked about in Sunday school, and he'd gone along to this regular Sunday school, and his every Sunday they used to get their book stamped, their little card book they stamped, and he worked out with the John Ball printing centre he had at home. He had the same star stamp. So he and his friends nipped off and went to the golf course to play, and he would stamp their cards up. Now, when it came to prize giving, Mum went with him, and they said, no prize for Jimmy. And she went up and spoke to the Sunday school teacher and said, what's all this? He's got look at his card, it's full. He said, but he hasn't got the signature, has he? He hasn't been here. Well, he got a clip side the ear, and he was so embarrassed that he never went back to church until he was in his 60s. And he was invited to an anniversary service, and he realised there was all these people that he knew. Now, we go a little while down the line, both he and his wife trusted Jesus as their saviour. And for Jimmy, it was just instantaneous. And he'd had this experience of Jesus, and he just wanted to go and tell everyone. Well, it was only about a year or so later, his wife became very ill, and she died. And she was his world. And he was a broken man. And when he went to see the doctor, they said, we're really sorry, Jimmy, but he had, what do they call that lung disease? Sorry? Asbestosis. And one of his lungs was completely full, and the other one was affected. They said, sorry, the shock to your system has taken you out of remission, and we don't know how long you've got left. But we want you to come back every single month and just get a picture taken so we can gauge what kind of treatment we're going to give you. And he said, okay, that's fine. So he said nothing about it to anyone. He just carried on. He had a claim in for asbestosis, and if he died of it, then his family would get a payout and all that kind of stuff. Well, he asked me if I could go for coffee one day, and we were sitting there. He said, Bob, something's happened. And I said, well, what's happened? He said, well, last month I went to see the doctor, and they took a picture of my lungs, an x-ray, and they showed it to me. I said, one of my lungs was white. He said, well, it's full, it's useless. He said, and the other one's sort of all bits all over it. He said, and they didn't know how long got left. I said, right. He said, well, went back this month. He said, and the doctor had two pictures up. There was a picture he showed me last time, and there was a new picture of perfectly clear lungs. And the doctor said, Jim, which is your picture? And he said, well, that one there. And he said, we don't understand this, but that is now your picture. His lungs were completely clear. They were so clear that they had to withdraw the claim for asbestosis because they couldn't find it in his body. A few months later, he was in hospital, very unwell, and I was called out because they thought he was on his last legs, and he was going through that terrible breathing stage, when he was going to die. And I walked in, and the family said, the pastor's here, we'll leave you to it. You see, they've been sitting there for hours with this man dying. And I sat by his bed and I held his hand and I said, well, Jim, it looks like I've better start praying you into glory and getting you ready for heaven. And he suddenly opened his eyes up and he said, I'm not going anywhere yet, am I? God surprised me yet again. And I said, well, not if it's not the Lord's time. And he got better. I mean, eventually he did die. And he actually went quite peacefully and just instantaneously and in a way that he would want to go to heaven. I was just struck by the fact that God takes us by surprise so many different times. And we doubt that when we read the stories in the scripture. But that's a real story from today, if you like. And we could recount stories and stories and stories. But if we come to this passage, let's talk about this pool of Bethesda. Now, the pool of Bethesda, and just imagine the scene. In this place, there's a pool that's said to have healing qualities when the water is stirred by an angel. Surrounding the pool, there's a whole load of people who are infirm. They're paralyzed people. There's people who are blind. They're lame. There may have been those with leprosy on the outskirts. And these folks were here for a miracle cure. Many had tried other things. And even God and their religion had let them down. This place was a place of last resort. Now, these folks had learned the hard way. They'd learned that the religious rules and explanations are often ineffective to heal our lives. So we've got to start immediately asking ourselves questions. How many times have you wondered if a religion really makes a difference? Does it really bring healing? Does it really enable us to face the difficulties that we must confront sometimes on a daily basis? And this was a really tough crowd, you know. This was a cynical group of people believing that religion and faith is just a luxury crutch for the able and the able-bodied and the weak-minded. There were others who had just given over to fatalism and said, well, look, this is the cards I've been dealt. What's in front of you won't go past you. You just got to get your head down, look after yourself and look after your own. And some were people who wanted to believe in the capability of the power of God to heal their lives. They were beaten and they were down, but they had this narrow focus, believing that physical health was the answer to everything, when in actual fact what they needed was spiritual healing. They were just plain fed up with the way that life was. To them, God was away up there in heaven somewhere, but painfully absent on earth. As they looked around them, all they could see was suffering and pain and hopelessness. So many had practiced religion that had left them so blind that they couldn't see God in a crowd. Now, how current is this for you and me today? The reason we don't see the obvious that is there is because we are looking at the wrong things. Our priorities are skewed, so consequently, we form opinions and we develop a life that's based on the things that we see and develop and on our bias that we develop too. We give into this is my opinion and all that matters type of attitude, and so we get to the point where we wouldn't know the truth if it came up and bit us. Let me tell you a wee story I read this week. A grandmother took a 6-year-old granddaughter for lunch. They had a lovely lunch, and on the way out of the restaurant, there was a big glass door. And as she came to the door, a young man was just approaching the door to come in. But he was wearing torn jeans and rough trainers, and his head was shaved at the side, and he had one of these coxcombs, you know, going all the way over, all coloured different spikes, and he had a chain going from his nose to his ear. And under one arm he had a skateboard, and under the other arm he had a basketball. She was obviously concerned about her granddaughter being frightened by this young guy as the image coming towards her. But then she got a real surprise, because the youngster reached up for the door and opened it and held the door open for him to come in. And the man said, oh, thanks very much. And he went in, and Grandma was pleasantly surprised that he was quite a polite young man. On the way to the car, she commended her granddaughter for her manners. In fact, he'd held a door open. She didn't seem troubled by the young fella's appearance at all, but she wanted to make sure if there was going to be a grandmotherly talk about freedom and self-expression and allowing people their differences, and if that was going to be in order, she wanted to be ready. Well, as it turned out, the person who needed to talk to was her. The only thing the little girl had noticed was the fact that the man had his arms full and he would never have gotten that door if she hadn't helped him. I saw, the woman said, a partially shaved head, a tuft of spiked hair, the piercings and a chain, and she saw a person carrying something under each arm and heading towards a door. So in the future, I hope I'll get down on her level and raise my sights a bit. We need to do some real self-examination when we are blinded by our pain or our prejudice. And we need to ask God to help us to see clearly without the blinkers that we have become so fond of. Here's your first heading. Ask a silly question. Look at the picture that we've got in the text. Around this pool, an assortment of folk, young and old, looking for healing. Now, we've got places like that today. We've got places like Lourdes in France. We've got Fatima in Portugal. And there's many, many other places that you can go to. And folk go there for the same reason. And in some cases, God does heal. But the lesson here is offering us a new focus. Because you see, it's not the place that brings healing. It is God himself who brings the healing. And all too often, we're caught in that same traps. And so many times, I've heard this story from folk who are clear that that's exactly where they were, associating that place, maybe even a church, because there was a whole load of things going on, but there isn't something right. God is there, they tell me. But there's this vacancy in their life. They might feel 90% satisfied. They might even feel 95% satisfied, but something is missing because they associate the place with God. And then as you walk away at the end of the service, the function gets distant again. And the amount of times I've talked to people about it was just so great when I was there. It was amazing. I felt the presence of God. It lifted me up. It drew me closer to him. And then when it seems so far away now, it's not real anymore. How many times have you heard that story? The man in this story has been at this pool for 38 years. Now, that's a long time in anyone's language. I was thinking about Polly's prayer, actually. I really appreciated that this morning. And as she was praying about us as a family, the young, the middle-aged, and the old. And I thought, middle-aged? No, I'm not. I'm old. It's a reality check, isn't it, of where you are, but knowing that you're in the presence of God, you know. Well, now I've lost my place, haven't I? So he'd been there for 38 years, this poor man. And he's puzzling over what's going on. His life is filled with people coming by, giving him a bottle of wine occasionally. He knows everyone that's there. It's become a community of his own. And then Jesus enters the picture. And he says to him, do you want to get well? 38 years. Do you want to get well? He thought maybe it was another punter coming up and saying, do you want some wine? Imagine just for a moment what's going through that guy's head. Imagine our response, what that would have been. That's a stupid question, isn't it? And so he says, look, sir, I've no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. And when I'm trying to get in, someone else goes ahead of me. Because what he did was he answered in the only way that he knew how. His understanding was that if you wanted to know about God or receive anything from God, then a holy site is the place to go. But Jesus was not saying to him, do you want to get well? And if you want to, I'll take you down to the front of the queue, and when the water's stirred, I'll push you in. What he is saying is forget the pool. Forget the building and forget the holy places. These things don't matter. What I'm saying to you is this. If you want to get well, I have the power to heal you and meet you wherever you are. And that's just the point, isn't it? We are here today Not to experience a church building, a different kind of service. We're here to encounter Jesus Christ. And we see such an encounter in this service through the experience of everyone else. Those of us that are Christians here have come to the point where we realize that we can do all sorts of good things, you know. We can come to church, we can read our Bibles, we can pray, we can help out in as many committees as we can stomach, and yet all our efforts are absolutely meaningless unless we do it all in relationship to Jesus. He is the one that changes our lives. He is the one who offers healing and perspective so that we can live with focus without forever looking over our shoulder or wondering what life is going to throw at us next. You see, as far as God is concerned, the church buildings and all the holy sites in the world could collapse into a pile of rubble because the dust does not matter to God. We do. This question that Jesus is asking, do you want to get well? It's such a crucial question for this man. It's a crucial question for each one of us. Do you really want to be well or whole? Or have you got to the point in your life where you despair if anything's going to change? Have you just accepted your lot? Have you adopted a fatalism so that you are content, if you're honest, just to sit by the pool and let everyone else be healed? In some ways, you know that it's convenient. It's a convenient position to take. You sit quietly in the background, not really having to make much effort at all, receiving the attention and sympathy, and offering your considered opinion from time to time. What a waste of time, and how pathetic that is. And here is God challenging each one of us about the condition of our soul. Do you want to get well? Or will your life forever be a bunch of lame excuses about the state of the church, about the state of the world, when in fact it's our pride that's holding us back from admitting that God, who sees anything anyway, we need to admit to him that we need some help here. Let me tell you about Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith is in hospital. And every day she lies in bed with a wet towel over her eyes and she moans over and over again, I'm dying, I'm dying. The fact of the matter is she's not dying. She's got one or two issues, minor medical issues, but there's hardly anything wrong with her, and looks like she's going to live a long time. Doctors have come round and looked at her charts. They've said, look, we've spoken to other doctors. You are not dying. You are absolutely fine. She even told a junior doctor, listen, young lad, I know living and I know dying, and I tell you, I'm dying. And meanwhile, her husband sits by the bed and he just mutters, look at her, she's hopeless. For those attending Mrs. Smith every day, it becomes abundantly clear that she is not dying. Her problem is that she's forgotten what it means to live. The hospital, just like the pool, has become her safe place. It's a comfortable place. And furthermore, she had lost all hope that life held any more for her than lying on the bed believing that she's going to die. How is living for you? Well, ask a silly question. There's a second heading, relying on God. Now, I read a great story this week about some fishermen in a fishing boat, and they were in a storm, and two men were actually on the deck, had to stay on the deck on watch. Sadly, one of the men got washed overboard, and they lost him. And when later on the captain noted in his log that the sailor who had perished had been in the most sheltered place, while the one who survived had been in the most exposed place, holding onto the mast. He noted that the difference was the one who survived had something to hold on to, the other one didn't. In asking the question, do you want to get well? Do you want to be whole? God is offering us something real to hold on to. He offers us himself, but we must let go of our own self and all these props that bring us comfort and we've got to trust him. Now, initially, when Jesus asked the question, the man focused on his own abilities. All he saw was his helplessness. Look, he says, I've got no one to help me in the pool, and the water is stirred while I'm trying to get in. Someone else goes ahead of me. Notice there's no debate about it at all. And I don't know if it was the way that Jesus approached him that made him believe, but he did. And Jesus just said to him, get up, pick up your mat and walk. What is it that holds us back from seeing the truth? You know, it's said that a dense fog that covers up to 7 city blocks has a depth of 100 feet, is only composed of less than a glass of water. Now, don't ask me about the science, I don't really understand it, but they reckon it's 60 billion tiny droplets. And yet, when those minute particles settle over a city or the countryside, they can block almost everything from your side. And I think that's just like life. We allow a cup full of troubles to cloud our vision, to dampen our spirit, to strangle our hope, that we get so confused in all that we can do is focus on our navel. God gives us the power to overcome sin in our lives. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believe in his name, he gave the right to become the children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor human decision, nor husband's will, but born of God. God has given us the opportunity to know Jesus Christ, the power to become Jesus' disciples, power to live. And there's great encouragement. Listen to this. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. He gives strength to the weary. He increases the power of the weak. You know, even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. I love that picture of this eagle pushing the youngsters out the nest. And some people have talked about how the eagle goes underneath and bounces the young. That's aerodynamically impossible. Do you know what they do? The mother comes underneath and creates an updraft with her wings so the youngsters can put out their wings and they can soar. That's exactly how we are meant to be when Jesus said, do you want to be well? And we're not to say that, yeah, but the thing is, Lord, I've got this problem, and, you know, it's nothing to do with that. We just got to say, yes, Lord. Then we will be able to soar on wings like eagles. We will run and not grow weary. We will walk and not be faint. Why do we deny ourselves by focusing so hard on that which is temporary when new life, when healing, when wholeness is just a heartbeat away? Why do we do that? Talk about ask a stupid questions. That's making a stupid statement, isn't it? So in conclusion, let me finish on these thoughts. You know, a teacher wrote on a board, number 4 and a number 2, and he asked the class, what is the solution? Well, some people shouted out 6. Some shouted out 2. Some even shouted out 8. And the teacher shook his head. He said, the problem is, you're making a collective error here. All of you have failed to ask the key question, what is the problem? You can't possibly find the answer if you don't know the problem. You see, the teacher knew that in everyday life, too much time is spent trying to solve the wrong problem. Our problem is sin. Selfish, independent nature. And the solution to our problem is Jesus Christ. So do you want to get well? But beware before you answer that question, because becoming a whole person brings with it risk. It brings an ask. For this man at the pool, this was a really risky thing because his life was going to change drastically. The first thing he'd have to do is go and get a job. Maybe he could write a book about his experiences. I don't know if he could read or write, but there you go. There'll be no more accepting handouts at the pool. There'll be no more self-pity. Things for him will have to change. He's going to have to take up his bed and walk for a change and do something for himself. And too often our problems become our pool. It's that something that limits our lives. Then the problem becomes the focus of our lives. It becomes our pet. And each time we're challenged to move on, we grab hold of it and say, you see, I've got this problem. It's too easy to blame our problems for where we are in life. We would like to believe, but we have this problem. That's got to be solved before I can believe. I've got to get my ducks lined up. We feel we must find a solution before we can ever begin to think about a better life, but we're not willing to expend the energy to solve it. We would rather think of it as impossible to be solved. So my word to you this morning is this. It's a good Scottish word, actually. Will you stop havering about and answer the question, do you want to get well? Let's watch a film and then we'll pray. Thanks, John.